He was the voice of America's heartland, the man who made country music feel real again. With that easy smile, that deep Oklahoma charm, and songs that felt like home, Blake Shelton became a symbol of strength, humor, and heart. But behind the laughter and the fame, there was something else, a quiet pain that never fully faded. From the loss that nearly broke him, to the love that changed everything, and the silence that followed when the world stopped listening. Blake Shelton's story is not just about fame, it's about survival. Because sometimes even the strongest voices carry the heaviest scars. Before the fame, before the spotlight, there was just a kid from Ada, Oklahoma, a small-town boy with a big voice and even bigger dreams. Blake Shelton grew up surrounded by red dirt roads, old guitars, and the kind of stories that only country folks understand. His father, a used car salesman, taught him grit and humor. His mother gave him heart. Together they shaped the man the world would one day come to know. By the time he was 12, Blake was already writing songs, not polished, not perfect, but honest. The kind of songs that would one day make millions feel like he was singing their story. But life, as it tends to, had a way of testing him early. When Blake lost his older brother in a tragic accident, something inside him changed forever. That heartbreak never really left. It became the quiet ghost behind every melody, the shadow behind his smile. And maybe, in some ways, that pain was the start of everything. The reason Blake's songs hit deeper, the reason fans connected with him so fiercely, because he wasn't just singing about love or loss, he was living it. But as time went on, that raw, emotional fire would lead him far beyond the Oklahoma backroads, into a world of fame, temptation, and heartbreak he could never have imagined. And that's where his story truly begins. When Blake Shelton first arrived in Nashville, he wasn't just chasing a dream. He was running toward purpose. That mix of Oklahoma grit and natural charisma made him stand out fast. But the industry wasn't kind. Doors slammed, promises broke, and people talked behind his back. Still, he kept showing up. Guitar in hand, hat tilted low, smile steady even when his heart wasn't. Then came his breakout single, Austin. It wasn't just a hit, it was an anthem. The story of missed calls and second chances hit listeners right where it hurt. Almost overnight, Blake Shelton became the new voice of modern country. The song topped charts, the spotlight followed, and suddenly the kid from Ada was a star. But success for Blake was never simple. Fame brought pressure, isolation, and the first cracks in his once simple life. The man who sang about love and longing was starting to live out both, in real time under a magnifying glass. Behind the jokes and the charm, he carried the weight of someone who knew how fast everything could disappear, and while the world saw a rising star, Blake was quietly learning that fame doesn't heal old wounds, it just hides them better. But fame wasn't the only thing coming his way. Soon a love story would enter his life, one that would lift him higher than ever before, and leave him shattered in ways no one saw coming. When Blake Shelton met Miranda Lambert, it wasn't just chemistry, it was combustion. Two of country's most powerful voices, both raw, passionate, and fiercely independent, collided in a way that made fans believe in love again. From the start, their connection was magnetic, the kind that can't be staged or faked. On stage, their harmonies felt like confessions. Off stage, their smiles hid something deeper. But what the world saw as a fairy tale was far more complicated behind closed doors. Both had demanding careers, endless touring schedules, and the constant glare of cameras waiting for cracks to show. And though Blake's humor and charm made it easy to think he had it all figured out, those who knew him say the pressure was suffocating. He was juggling fame, heartbreak, and expectations, all while trying to hold on to the one person who truly understood him. Their marriage became one of the most talked-about relationships in country music, beautiful, but burning too bright. Rumors swirled, tabloids speculated, and fans took sides. But the truth was simpler and sadder. Sometimes two people can love each other deeply and still fall apart. By the time it ended, Blake was left with a silence heavier than any heartbreak before. The same man who could light up a stage was suddenly quiet, broken and unsure of what to do next. But life, as always, had another twist waiting. Because just when Blake thought his heart was done, someone unexpected walked in and changed everything. No one saw it coming. Not the fans, not the tabloids, not even Blake himself. When he met Gwen Stefani on The Voice, their worlds couldn't have been more different. She was California pop royalty. He was Oklahoma country soul. But heartbreak speaks a universal language, and both of them were fluent. They were two people trying to rebuild after being broken. What started as quiet understanding soon became something real, and for Blake it felt like a second chance. Their chemistry on screen wasn't a performance. It was healing in real time. Viewers could see the way they looked at each other, two souls finding light again after too much darkness. Gwen brought out a side of Blake that fans hadn't seen before, softer, more grounded, almost peaceful. He laughed again, wrote again, lived again. Together, they became one of entertainment's most surprising power couples. A mix of cowboy boots and California dreams that somehow just worked. But as the years went on, and their love became a brand of its own, some began to wonder what was real and what was rehearsed. The constant speculation, the gossip headlines, the endless questions, it all began to take a toll. Blake had always been an open book, but now pages were missing. He spoke less in interviews, released fewer songs, and slowly started pulling away from the public eye. And for the first time in a long time, fans began to notice something unsettling. Blake Shelton was going quiet, but silence for Blake has never meant peace. There's often been the signal that something deeper is going on. For a man who once lived in the spotlight, Blake Shelton's silence was deafening. The jokes faded, the interviews slowed, and the social media posts that once showed his easy grin became rare. Fans noticed it immediately. Something in his tone had changed. He wasn't the same lively judge cracking jokes on The Voice or the carefree country boy tossing out hits every year. Instead, he seemed distant, reflective, almost tired. When he announced his decision to step back from The Voice, many thought it was just time for a new chapter. But behind the scenes, whispers grew louder, some saying he was burned out, others suggesting something deeper was weighing on him. There were rumors of creative struggles, personal battles, even talk that Blake was quietly fighting to rediscover his passion for music. Some reports claimed he'd spent long stretches back in Oklahoma, away from cameras, spending time alone or with close family. Fans began to wonder if the man who once sang about God's country had finally gone home for good. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear. Blake wasn't chasing the charts anymore. He wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing peace. And in a world that had watched him love, laugh, lose, and rebuild in front of millions, that sudden stillness felt almost haunting. But then, just when everyone thought Blake Shelton was done, something began to stir. Talk of new music, raw, emotional, and unlike anything he'd done before, started to surface. In 2025, whispers started spreading across the country music world. Blake Shelton was back in the studio. Fans lit up social media with hope, claiming the singer had been quietly working on a deeply personal record titled Backroads and Heartaches. Some said it was his most honest work yet, a reflection of loss, love, and the loneliness that came after the fame. But as the excitement grew, something strange happened. The album never came. There was no release date, no official statement, just silence. And that silence spoke louder than any song could. Rumors started swirling again. Some insiders claimed Blake had scrapped the project entirely, after struggling to capture what he truly wanted to say. Others said the songs were too real, too raw, a mirror he wasn't ready to face. A few even hinted that his marriage to Gwen Stefani had hit quiet turbulence, and that the emotional tone of the album had shifted because of it. Of course, nothing was ever confirmed. Blake, as always, stayed tight-lipped. But for fans who followed him through every heartbreak and high note, Backroads and Heartaches became more than an unreleased album. It became a symbol of where Blake Shelton really was, standing between the man he used to be and the one he's still trying to become. And if the rumors are true, that new music, whenever it comes, might just reveal the version of Blake he's been hiding all along. When Blake Shelton appeared at the 2025 American Music Awards, fans were stunned. It was one of his rare public appearances since stepping back from The Voice. And while his trademark smile was there, something about him felt different. He looked reflective, quieter than usual, as though he was carrying something unspoken. The cameras caught moments that fans immediately dissected, the faraway glances, the polite laughter that didn't quite reach his eyes. Within hours, social media was on fire. Some said he looked exhausted. Others swore they saw sadness behind that easy grin. And then came the rumors, claims that Blake was struggling to balance his private life with the weight of his legacy. Others suggested he was still processing everything he'd been through. The loss, the heartbreaks, the pressure of fame, and the quiet cost of always being the strong one. Through it all, Blake stayed silent, just as he always has when the world tries to read between his lines. But those who followed his journey know one thing. Blake Shelton has never been one to fake his feelings. When he's happy, you feel it. When he's hurting, you can hear it in every note. And at the AMAs that night, even without a microphone in hand, it felt like he was still telling a story, not through words or music, but through presence. Because sometimes silence isn't emptiness, it's truth, the kind only a man who's lived through it all can carry. Blake Shelton has lived a life that most can only dream of. Chart-topping songs, sold-out tours, love stories that defined a decade, and a voice that became the heartbeat of country music. But behind the laughter, behind the spotlight, there's always been something deeper, a man searching for peace in a world that never stops watching. His story isn't just one of fame or heartbreak, it's about endurance, the kind that doesn't need applause to prove its worth. Blake has faced loss, love, and the pressure of staying strong when the world expected nothing less. Yet through it all he's remained grounded, still that boy from Oklahoma, who found solace in a song. Fans often say Blake's greatest gift isn't his voice, it's his honesty. Even in silence, his music speaks. And maybe that's what makes him timeless. He doesn't chase trends, he doesn't pretend. He simply tells the truth, one lyric at a time. So whether Backroads and Heartaches ever sees the light of day or not, Blake Shelton's story is far from over. He's still writing it, quietly, patiently, on his own terms. Because the strongest souls don't always roar. Sometimes they just sing, softly, honestly, from the heart. In a world that moves fast and forgets even faster, Blake Shelton has done something rare. He stepped away, not out. His silence isn't surrender, it's strength. It's a man choosing peace over pressure, truth over applause. We've watched him rise from the red dirt of Oklahoma to the world stage, fall in love, lose himself, and find his way back again, not through headlines but through heart. And maybe that's the lesson his story leaves behind. You don't need to be loud to be heard, because sometimes the greatest songs aren't the ones played on the radio. They're the ones still being written in the quiet moments when no one's watching. And for Blake Shelton, those quiet moments might just be his masterpiece in the making.